Today on NewsWatch, it is official. Donald Trump is now the Republican nominee for president. See who's rallying behind him and the big role his children are playing at the convention. Plus, are you better off than you were 8 years ago? We'll look at the impact of President Obama and just how much he's changed America. And millions of Christians standing up this week for Israel. Why Pastor John Hagee says it's biblical, not political. And thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Make America First Again. That is today's theme at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. It comes after delegates voted ahead of schedule Tuesday to officially declare Donald Trump as the Republican nominee for president. Our CBN News team is at the convention with the latest. Abigail Robertson starts us off.
Donald J. Trump has been selected as the Republican Party nominee for President of the United States.
The delegate count from Donald Trump's home state of New York fittingly put the candidate over the top. His own son delivered the announcement from the floor.
And it is my honor to be able to throw Donald Trump over the top in the delegate count tonight with 89 delegates. Congratulations, Dad, we love you!
The candidate's controversial ex-campaign manager announced New Hampshire's votes, along with a supportive message.
And 11 votes for my friend and the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump!
Trump beamed into the event via satellite.
What we did getting the party's nomination, I'll never forget it. It's something I will never, ever forget.
The theme now is party unity, with Donald Trump's own children emphasizing his conservative values, while party establishment offered their support for the unconventional GOP nominee.
Have we had our arguments this year? Sure we have. You know what I call those? Signs of life. What do you say that we unify this party at this crucial moment when unity is everything? Fellow Republicans, what we have begun here, let's see this thing through.
Donald Trump Jr. delivered a powerful, structured speech aiming to bridge the gaps between the Trump campaign and establishment Republicans.
His true gift as a leader is that he sees the potential in people that they don't even see in themselves. He's recognized the talent and the drive that all Americans have. He's promoted people based on their character, their street smarts, and their work ethic.
Chris Christie's task in the night's lineup, putting the focus on Hillary Clinton.
We cannot make the chief law enforcement officer of the United States someone who has risked America's secrets. We didn't disqualify Hillary Clinton to be president of the United States. The facts of her life and career disqualify her.
Trump's path to the nomination has been a challenging one, and now it gets even tougher with the general election campaign. My colleague John Jessup explains why the new GOP standard bearer will need all the help he can get.
The Republican road to Cleveland started with a traffic jam of experienced politicians against a brash outsider that no one gave much of a chance.
Now that Donald Trump has officially won the support of his party, Republicans are now looking forward to November and a potential victory over Hillary Clinton. But Donald Trump still has some work to do to coalesce the entire Republican Party.
While he still needs to win over some skeptics, a number of conservative Christians quickly offered their support.
I think I was the first one to endorse him, and I thought he was the best man for the job.
Others took a little longer to jump on board.
There is a gap between Donald Trump and most evangelicals.
Tony Perkins has championed traditional values for the Family Research Council for more than a decade. He first supported Ted Cruz's White House bid, warning evangelicals against voting by fear, a tactic he suggested Trump used to resonate with angry voters concerned about terrorism, immigration, and an advancing liberal agenda pushed by President Obama. But that was then.
His track record on issues actually is kind of counter of the ground he's staked out right now. And that's okay. People can change their minds.
Like Trump, Perkins also experienced a change of heart. He even worked to assure other skeptics by organizing last month's closed-door New York meeting between Trump and influential evangelicals, including those in the pro-life movement.
He's said some things that I disagree with, that the pro-life movement disagrees with, but on this issue, perhaps more than any other, he's shown a willingness to correct himself. He's taken constructive criticism, and he's come out and he's clarified.
One major turning point for her and others came with the death of conservative Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. The other was Trump's choice for running mate.
Unlike Donald Trump, Mike Pence does have a voting record, and it's a very strong one.
Trump's pledge to protect religious freedom and appoint pro-life judges has also helped to sway some evangelicals who still have their doubts. He understands this is a group he needs if he wants to sit in the White House.
They don't have to be out necessarily standing on every corner waving Trump signs, but they have to be comfortable enough to vote for him and encourage their friends to turn out and vote.
And it appears he's making inroads. The Faith and Freedom Coalition's Ralph Reed tells CBN News that Donald Trump has already closed the gap.
Today, he's winning 78% of the evangelical vote, and Hillary is getting 17%. That's the highest recorded for any Republican nominee in the last 25 years.
With a little more than 3 months to Election Day, he's hoping to win over as many more as he can. John Jessup, CBN News, Cleveland.
A community of faith-based leaders are appealing for reconciliation in Louisiana days after 3 police officers were killed in Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge Together held its second news conference to address the ambush attack on law enforcement officers.
All lives matter. Amen. And violence begets violence. Yes. We call upon this community to give respect to our police officers. They are our first responders. They're here to protect us. We should pray for them. There is no place in our society for these senseless killings.
That group held its first news conference in the days following the death of Alton Sterling. All speakers stressed the importance of unity and community dialogue. In Florida, hundreds of Christians gathered to pray at a council meeting in response to plans for a satanic invocation. Pensacola news station WEAR-TV reports last week the co-founder of a local satanic temple was set to give the meeting's invocation. Before he could get started, Christian community members interrupted and began saying the Lord's Prayer. One of the residents gathered at the meeting told the news station, quote, "I saw a community of people come together and take a stand for what is right." The prayer clash comes after a debate about whether the town should switch to a moment of silence before council meetings in lieu of prayer. After the failed coup in Turkey, the government there has begun a massive purge of political opponents. President Erdogan has weakened the military dramatically, rounding up 5,000 personnel, including 115 generals and 350 officers. But he's also targeting thousands of ordinary citizens, firing 15,000 teachers. Dale Hurd is on this story.
As many as 50,000 members of the government, military, police, courts, and schools have been suspended or detained since the coup attempt. A huge number. It's clear that President Erdogan, who was already crushing dissent, sees the coup attempt as a golden opportunity to remake the government even more in his image, more authoritarian and more Islamic.
This coup has empowered President Erdogan more than ever. And Erdogan can easily use this, yes, to establish more control over Turkish society, to bring a presidential system almost tailor-made for himself with little checks and balances.
Lists of those to be purged were reportedly made up before the coup. It has caused some to wonder if Erdogan allowed the coup or encouraged it as a way to smoke out remaining dissent.
It was carried out by a small fraction within the Turkish army connected to the Gülenist group, a criminal organization, a terrorist organization, a religious cult.
The government says the coup was the work of Turkish cleric Fethullah Gülen, who lives in exile in the U.S. They want him extradited. Gülen has condemned the coup. The White House is now reviewing material from Turkey to determine if it amounts to a formal extradition request. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
From the streets of Tehran to the halls of the UN to Hezbollah on Israel's northern border, the Jewish state faces enemies seeking to demonize or destroy it. But as CBN News' Chris Mitchell reports from Washington, D.C., the number of Christians standing up for Israel is growing and even affecting the presidential race.
Christians United for Israel, or CUFI, has grown to more than 3 million members. Founder Pastor John Hagee started out 11 years ago to teach Christians about the biblical mandate to stand with Israel.
Because every evangelical has a biblical basis for supporting the state of Israel. Supporting Israel is not a political issue, it's a Bible issue.
CUFI is having an impact on presidential politics. One network credits the group with influencing Republicans to adopt the most pro-Israel platform in U.S. history.
So because of Christians United for Israel, which was specifically named in the article, the Republican Party said, we're going to have a plank that says Jerusalem shall be an undivided city in the future.
Even with that political victory, Middle East experts like Colonel Oliver North believe Israel is under more threat than ever.
Now, the Iranians and the North Koreans are building nuclear weapons and the means of delivering them that have Israel as the nearest target and us ultimately as the great Satan target. So it's different than the threat has ever been before. So CUFI, Christians United for Israel, can make all the difference in the world in terms of educating people about the real threat and what we ought to do about it. Simple as that.
CUFI believes a big part of standing with Israel is what's happening on college campuses today. Behind me is something you might see in a college campus. It's an apartheid wall. It vilifies Israel's security barrier. So CUFI has enlisted hundreds of students around the country to present the truth about Israel. They call it the battle for the future.
We're fighting for the future of Israel. We're fighting for the future of America.
CUFI Representative Maria Lilly says pro-Palestinian groups often try and shut down pro-Israel speech on college campuses.
We're in for a battle. On so many college campuses around the country and even around the world, students face so much anti-Semitism and backlash for their support of Israel.
Pastor Hagee feels it's crucial for the U.S. to stand with Israel.
The Bible verse, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, is the promise of God, and God keeps his promises.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Washington.
Still to come, are you better off than you were 8 years ago? From the economy to executive orders, we'll look back at President Obama's 2 terms in office. The economy is one of the top issues in this presidential election year, just as it was 8 years ago when President Obama was elected. But critics say the president has failed to restore the economy. Instead, he's buried it under a heavy burden of regulations and taxes. They say his other major domestic programs like Obamacare have also failed to live up to his promises. Jennifer Wishon now brings us the story.
Surprise walk on the National Mall.
Sorry to mess up your run.
Meeting kids at the White House Science Fair.
Oh!
Or becoming the first commander-in-chief to use a selfie stick.
Hey, everybody.
President Obama has a way with people.
He's got the swag.
But many Americans say the policies he's pushed over the past 7.5 years have left the nation in a state of disrepair. He started his administration amid the Great Recession. America was bleeding jobs, losing 800,000 each month. A Democratic Congress passed the president's solution, an $830 billion stimulus plan.
I think we've come through probably the toughest year we've had since the 30s.
But 7 years later, the economy still isn't fully back on track. Liberal economists say his stimulus package wasn't big enough. Conservatives say sinking more money into government was never the solution. In reality, the growth that followed the president's stimulus has been very weak compared to other recoveries.
If you compare his recovery to previous recoveries, it's a huge failure. And in fact, on the metrics, it's the worst economic recovery since the Great Depression.
In the 80s, after 10 quarters of recovery under President Reagan, the economy was exploding at an annual rate of 6%. But during the same amount of time under President Obama, the economy grew just 2.4%. That's just half the average growth rate of 4.6% after other recessions.
And even though the unemployment rate has dropped, with millions leaving the workforce, the economy has grown relatively slowly throughout the Obama presidency. And it's an issue that still dogs him in the sunset of his second term.
While many cities have recovered, studies show rural regions still haven't regained jobs lost during the recession. Some even continue to deteriorate. Early in his first term, President Obama succeeded where other Democrats had failed when Congress passed his Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare. Over and over, the president told leery Americans,
if you like the plan you have, you can keep it. If you like the doctor you have, you can keep your doctor too. The only change you'll see are falling costs as our reforms take hold.
But they proved to be promises he wouldn't keep. The fact-checking group PolitiFact called it the lie of the year. Millions have lost or will lose their employer-based plans. Many can't keep their doctors without paying more. And premiums for people purchasing coverage in the individual market have gone up substantially.
The president said that the country would experience a reduction in health insurance premiums and that American families typically would see a $2,500 reduction on an annual basis in their premiums. None of this appears to be coming true. We're looking at much higher premiums and much higher deductibles.
There are popular parts of Obamacare, like not penalizing patients for pre-existing conditions and allowing young adults to stay on their parents' plans longer. But critics say the negatives far outweigh the benefits.
In many ways, it probably would have been simpler and cheaper just to give everybody money to buy insurance.
Government-run healthcare still isn't working for many of America's veterans. The president oversees a Department of Veterans Affairs that, according to a new report, still suffers from profound deficiencies in delivering healthcare to millions of veterans. This is 2 years after the wait time scandal, when as many as 40 veterans died while awaiting care at a VA hospital. Facing a Republican Congress, President Obama has relied on more government regulations and his executive powers to push his agenda.
Instead of reducing regulations, it's been a regulatory tsunami. He's got Obamacare, endless regulations, also enormous increases in future taxes and spending. He's got Dodd-Frank, which massively increased regulations on financial community. He has the EPA running wild.
He's issued 242 executive orders on everything from abortion to wages. One that drew intense controversy shielded millions of illegal immigrants from deportation and made them eligible for work permits without approval from Congress. The Supreme Court essentially struck it down by kicking it back to a lower court, which had already ruled the president doesn't have the authority to take that action.
One of the issues at the forefront for many conservatives was that this was a blatant violation of the separation of powers. The president is not the one who makes the law.
In a separate move, his Department of Education issued a letter of guidance to public schools across the country, telling them that they must allow transgender students to use bathrooms and locker rooms that match their gender identity. The controversy over this edict is still brewing.
How you feel about your gender does not change your sex at birth. And how the president feels about his authority to write laws cannot change the fact that the Constitution grants that power to Congress.
As the president wraps up his time in the White House, it's clear he's made good on one of his campaign promises. He's changed America.
Thank you.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Tried by fire, the story of Christianity's first 1,000 years and why it still matters today. The story's next. A 3rd century writer said the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, and a new book reveals that as true today as it was in early years of Christianity. From Africa to the Middle East to Asia and around the globe, Christians today are the target of persecution. Open Doors USA says nearly 4,000 Christians are killed for their faith every year. Thousands more suffer violence in the form of beatings, abductions, rapes, and false arrests. Author and historian Bill Bennett says persecution of the church today may be the worst in history.
I think it may be worse today. I think in terms of sheer numbers, if you count the Middle East, Islam, if you count China, if you count other places, the persecution of Christians goes on every day. Some small Christian sects in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Iran, have been eliminated maybe forever.
But from the earliest days of the church, whenever persecution increases, the church grows and even flourishes. Bennett calls that one of the awe-inspiring paradoxes of Christianity.
Whatever they could imagine to do to Christians, they did. But the remarkable thing is, and you quoted it, the blood of the martyrs was the seed of the church. The more the persecution took place, the faster the church grew.
Bennett writes about the early years of church persecution, perseverance, and expansion in a detailed historical narrative called Tried by Fire, the story of Christianity's first 1,000 years.
It is a remarkable story. I mean, this little sect becomes one of the religions of the world and changes the world forever, Christianity. And the story is not well known. I like to think of it as the second greatest story ever told.
Scripture says, upon this rock I will build my church, and the very gates of hell will not prevail against it. Stay with us. We're coming right back with more CBN NewsWatch. It is time now for your Wednesday Word. As you move through the day and face unique challenges, remember this: your problems aren't normal because you are not average, and God has greater for you. With that, never forget that you are always victorious, and it is written in Scripture, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. With that, make this a wonderful Wednesday. And that is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. We'd love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you join us again right here next time. Have a wonderful Wednesday. We'll see you right back here come tomorrow.